Hello and welcome to this repair tutorial, and today we're going to look at a Rotel and the model number is RA-01. In terms of general specifications, output power is 40 watts into 8 ohms and frequency response is 10 Hz to 40 kHz, and then total harmonic distortion is 0.03%. And in terms of inputs, you have a moving magnet input so you can connect directly a turntable, 2.5 millivolts, and then for your auxiliary 1 to CD tuner and tape, line inputs 150 millivolts, and then your preamp output 1 volt into an input impedance of 470 ohms. And then in terms of dimensions, width is 435, depth 342, and height 72, with a weight of 5.9 kilograms. The amplifier also has a 1/4 inch headphone jack socket, and you also have the ability to defeat or to turn off the tone control circuits. And then you also have individual controls then for your volume control, input selection, etc. Now, we've covered this particular fault in other tutorials, but probably what has not been described is what is the symptom when you see this particular issue. Well, what I'm showing you now is the low voltage power supply. And what this is generating is both the positive 18 volts and negative 18 volt supplies. And this supply is used in numerous parts of the circuit, including the input stage of the amplifier and then also the tone control circuits. When you have a failure of the low voltage power supply, if you connect your speakers or maybe you're connecting headphones, immediately what you will hear is a very, very loud buzzing sound coming through the speakers, almost as if you had an issue with very, very high DC or even a short circuit on the output stage. But of course that is not the case because the power input protection fuses are fine. There's no excess current draw at all. And if you check the other fuses for the speaker outputs, again, there's no failure. Now, what I'm highlighting here is that this is actually the photograph taken from this amplifier. And what you can see is that there is a circle drawn around one of the Zener diodes. And that diode is D905. Now, what has happened, when I did a check and put the multimeter across the diode, there was 0 volts. So the diode was completely open circuit. And if you touched it, it literally broke apart. Now, this is a very, very common issue with this amplifier. So always best to check that. And then the other thing that we're bringing to your attention is the glue which you see. And sometimes it can be seen that maybe this is leakage from the capacitors, but it isn't. During manufacture, they just applied a glue just to provide more mechanical strength. And then as time passes, two things happen. First of all, the glue becomes current conductive, but it also becomes corrosive as well. Now, often what I'm asked is how would you actually go about removing this glue? Well, what I'm showing you next is a label removal tool. And as you can see that the sharp face that is used for scraping off this glue is plastic. And I would tell people always to avoid metal. If you do that and use something metal, what will happen is it will damage the top of the circuit board and scratch it. Here with this label removal tool, because the plastic is softer than the fiberglass which is used to construct the circuit board, you can then remove it relatively easily. What I would also say as well is just wear some goggles or some eye protection, because what can happen with the glue is sometimes it can be very, very hard, almost like a lacquer, and if you try and prise it off the board, flecks of this glue can just flick up and maybe cause eye injury. So just take the necessary precautions just to avoid that. And then once the diodes have been replaced and the glue removed, and then what I've installed is 2 brand new 18 volt 500 milliwatt Zener diodes. Now as soon as that is done and you check the amplifier, what you'll hear is excellent audio quality. And relatively speaking, it's quite a straightforward repair, not complicated. But in the previous tutorials we described it, but not what you would hear if you were the owner operator and you had a failure of the low voltage power supply. The other work that we always carry out, of course, is the replacement of the speaker output protection relays. And what I'm showing you here are 2 of those, because you have the ability to select 2 sets of speaker outputs, A and B, or both of them together, or to turn them off for personal listening via the headphones. You can see here from the top view a very, very clean layout. And then the final thing to do for this particular repair and service, the user controls were all clean with De-Oxit, so these are the switches and also the control potentiometers on the front. You can see towards the rear the 2 new blue speaker protection relays, and these are sealed relays of very high quality. And then you can also see as well the left hand and right hand audio output transistors, which are bolted directly to the metal heatsink, and then also the driver transistors. And then you can just make out just 2 presets. Well, these presets are then used to adjust the DC bias for the channels. So what I'm showing here, circuit schematic for the right channel, and what I'm pointing to is the blue preset. And this is what you need to adjust, and you will need to connect your multimeter across the test pins and then measure directly 4 millivolts. So here what you can see is that we have a slightly higher reading, and this is normally leaving the amplifier on for about 20 minutes. And you can see that it's reading 4.34 millivolts. And then after adjustment, you're looking to bring that down then to 4 millivolts, and then repeat the same operation as well for the left channel. It's also important as well just to check the DC offset on the rear of the amplifier. And the way in which you would do that, again with no speakers connected, your volume control at minimum and your other user controls at midpoint. Just measure the voltage across the speaker terminals. Just ensure, of course, that the front switches in the correct position, A, B, etc., are not off. And then just verify that it should really just be a few millivolts. You'll see other repair tutorials where there's a high DC offset which has occurred with some of these Rotel amplifiers. In this case, I've just put a link for the RA-10 audio amplifier, and then you can then use that link to follow along for that tutorial. And that's quite in depth with regard to fixing a DC offset issue which is in the input stage of the amplifier. And then once that is done, as I'm showing you here, you can see the two diodes. The lower one, or the closest one to you, there was no glue damage at all, but you can see the other one at the back. You can see the level of corrosion that has occurred because of this glue. And then really the final stage of the repair and service is just to put the amplifier into test and just verify that everything is working correctly. And as I've said many times before, the Rotel amplifiers are really a joy to work on. Really excellent amplifier. And full access to the whole of the circuit board enables you to do necessary repair work and also to service the amplifier. So if you need any help, guidance or assistance, by all means email audio amplifier servicing at aol.com, and I'll be happy to come back to you and provide any guidance, support or assistance that you may require. So until the next time, I wish you all the very best. Cheers and bye bye.